All right, we are officially going, a couple minutes late, sorry about that. We'll get moving with our facilities committee meeting here. Ellie, do you guys want to start, or do you want to?
Yeah, we can start. Thanks for meeting with us. Well, obviously, I think most people were probably at the board meeting where Peter Leatherman gave his survey results. If you weren't, that's on YouTube, right, Jim?
Yes, it is, yep.
Peter, I encourage you to watch it. Peter does hundreds and hundreds of these. He's very good at disseminating the data and giving you kind of what the norm is of what the trends he sees. Randy, you could be able to see his?
Yes.
Okay, watched it. Okay, good.
It starts at about 48 minutes into the.
Yep, I encourage you to. Our intent here is not to rehash the entire survey. That's not our expertise. That's his. If you have specific questions on that, we can get those answered from Peter. He would have joined us on Zoom, but he's on family spring break. So we don't want to bug you on this spring break. So, but we just wanted to pull out. I think we all probably took different things out of the survey. There's good news and bad news. There's good news that there's certainly support. There's certainly an awareness, and there's trust for the community that you guys are going to spend your money wisely. There's good confidence level in the board administration. But there's also a cold, wet blanket in the face of financial reality that came loud and clear through there. So we just basically, there's different elements of the plan that they support, maybe in the public. But we definitely need to live within the dollar amount and the tax impact, that limit that they're setting. Otherwise, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. It doesn't matter how great a plan is. If it exceeds the affordability limit of the taxpayers, it's a moot point. So we really just have to live within it. Budgetarily is the key. So we thought we'd pull out some of the, Ellie and I pulled out a few of the kind of highlights, if you would, from the survey. When asked the question what the quality of education you receive here, good and excellent together was 74%, right about average. I think average
normal is 75 to 80, so you're right there.
Right, so people feel that they're getting a good quality education here. They believe in the school system. It's an excellent, really. Specific perceptions about that. The blue is who agrees, and you can see your blue to red here is roughly 3 to 1, which is good. It's not God job and Bell, it's a good job. Did I catch that?
We weren't able to change the PowerPoint.
It's a
God job. Didn't see that.
Well, I picked up on
it's
it
a PDF.
during
So we got
Peter's.
fiction, so, it's nothing. Yeah, fine print, exactly. But again, they see that you've spent money effectively. You've received good money on taxpayer dollars. And again, vast majority of people are supportive in that manner. So when they do agree to give you money, you think to spend it well, but they're only going to give you so much.
And just to give you perspective on it, like spent effectively, efficiently, you're at 69, 57% is kind of the normal. So that's a good sign. That's really good. Received good investment is a little bit lower than normal, but not, 75%, that's really good. Spent referendum funds responsibly is 68%, and normally it's about 60%. So you're, my point is you're really good job involving, that's right on the norm. And then the only thing, like good investment tax increase, you're high on the disagreement. It's usually 25% or less. So that's the only one on there that's a little not as good as the rest, but the rest you really came in above average.
But I think from an awareness, what most serious issue, the good news, the facility needs is on top, right? So people know that there's an awareness that there's needs in the facilities, and facilities need some investment. And that's from when contemplating capital referendum, it's good to see that that's the starting place as far as public awareness. Predistribution, this one's not quite as positive. In fact, it's not. It's kind of sort of starting in the hole. And if you remember what Peter talked about there, what Peter really looks at when you're beginning the whole phase, he looks at your against all, for all, and he says you're at -8, so 27 versus 19. Your 8-point delta there just before doing anything it just kind of, it sort of speaks to the tax hostility is kind of the term I think Peter uses. So there's a little bit of negativity when it comes to taxes. And so we're up against the wall there a little bit, but the good news is persuadable is a pretty big chunk, but you're not going to get all of persuadable, so you know that. So we have to work hard. We're going to have to, again, keep it affordable and work really hard on the messaging to make this successful. We tested different components. You can kind of see, what was supported and what was opposed. The three in the bottom are non-starters. When 2/3 are already saying no, you're up against it. There's no reason in even contemplating these three. They're as Peter would say, they're non-starters. They're going to drag your whole referendum down. Up here, it's pretty supportive. From here up, we're above 60%, which is good. We got to be careful here and be wise about what we do with these two improvements. This kind of speaks to, we support them, but we got to see what the tax impact is for them. So again, the plan is to come up with a solution and do another survey. We call it brush fire survey. We call it that because it's not nearly as many questions, but we test the specific solution once we get there, and we'll want to test these things and say, if any improvements we do at Bird Island, here's what we're looking at, and here, oh, by the way, here's the tax impact of that. Do you still support it? So, but the other ones up here are supported strongly. I think one of the things we're going to have to think about here is we don't have as much tax money as we did do everything. We can't. We have to come to that reality, and so some things can be added on in the future. People support air conditioning, for example. That can easily be added in the future, right? That doesn't have to be a base question one. You could wait. Air conditioning can be done. You can get, the board has LTFM levy authority to tax for that in the future when they want to. When inflation is under control, people feel better about the economic future. Is probably what I consider doing with air conditioning. Any ventilation work we get, any air handlers like do now, they get done in phase one. We make sure that it easily accommodates air conditioning set up. It's got the coil space and everything. So, but that's an example of an element we can pull out to help get down to the dollar amount we got to get to. We should talk about the idea of making these improvements. Again, bad idea. It's a good idea. It's -8, but the good idea is still 57. So this is still a positive. I mean, that I think Pat, you said we came in as long as we're staying to the base needs, it'll be supported. Demographics, these kind of, but again, this is where the cold wet blanket of financial reality hits us. This is the big one here. When 58% of the population feels financially stressed, that's really what is the limiting factor for any project we do here. So. Property taxes, this is where, back to Peter talked about the tax hostility, is when people feel that are somewhat high, you're over 60% on that from a tax hostility standpoint. So again, some of that can be combated through communications. Everyone thinks their taxes are high. They don't live in another district. They don't live in another town. They don't know if their taxes are really high. So that's part of the education. But again, it does speak to the tax hostility here. And then last one was, I think we have on the slide here, was, if you remember, Peter looked at it and said, we tested the tax tolerance, and it is, right around $15 a month is what we got to hit. At least in question one. If you want to go for more, I would make your question one $15 or less tax impact, and then if you something else you really want to try, I think that's a question too.
And what was interesting, if you remember when he did this one, he asked this question twice in the survey, right? Yep. So at the beginning, usually you ask it and then you get the results for that, and then you educate the people, you know, on what potential options are, what potential things are, and a lot of times it would change. In this instance, it didn't change at all. So it was exactly the same
Yeah,
from
it
one
was-
to the other.
Yep, that was unique. So the real question is, so the financial reality is $15 a month. So what does that mean? So we had your municipal advisor, Baker Tilly. Taxes up, I talked to, what does $15 get us?
Okay.
All right, so a lot of numbers, let me kind of help you through this, so so if you go through what we asked them to do, if you look up on my sheet, I'm gonna show you. If, right down here in the middle, I drew a yellow line, you see it says monthly tax impact, $141,500 home, that's your median home value in the district. So right here, see that row? And if you go across, you see $10, 15, 20, right? So we basically say, make it silly, for $10 a month, for that to 15, but what does that buy you? If you go up to here, right above that, it says available proceeds for project costs. See that row? It basically says, on an average home, 131, if you go across to $15, you got basically 26,952,000 of buying power, right? So,
So the actual cost of the levy is the tar.
correct. And what's available, yes, because
We get to spend of that.
that's 30-year financing, 5.1. So what I'm telling you is when the survey data is loud and clear, $15 is, in theory, you said 14, you said 15, it's not pushing it. Right? You get about 27 million buying power. Is what we gotta get budget wise. That's, we gotta build a solution around that dollar amount. Now, I will tell you, I would say 27 to 30 million solution. I would target 30. The reason I say that is Baker Tilly is hedging on their interest rate. It's 5.15%. If you sold it today, it's about 4.15. So as they're doing that because they're not exactly sure where you're going to referendum, so they're always conservative. They kind of show you worst case. If the closer we get to the referendum, I think the more in to defend those interest rates, Baker Tilly is willing to lower that tax rate or that borrowing rate assumption, and it'll give you more borrowing. And then also right now, municipal bonds are seeing bid premiums, which means you're getting more proceeds than you're asking for on the market right now. People are willing to buy municipal bonds. So that's why I said it says 26.9 or 27 million. I think if we target 27 to 30, it's what it's a safe bet. Good question. And then the far column, we ran one just to show you the difference. The far right column, option 4, was $20 a month in average home, but 20-year financing versus 30. See that difference? So you see the interest rates, 5.2 versus 5.15. There is no real difference in interest rate. So it's the weird thing about bond yields right now is that you're not getting penalized for going out further. So, but the buying power, it gives you, 28.7 versus 36 million buying power. So I just want to give you that data point. So that's what that sheet tells us. We got to kind of hit $27-30 million. The next sheet is the exact same. The next sheet is basically the exact same data. You see that the colored row across the top is a $131,000 house at $10 a month, $15 a month, right? But it just uses the same stuff. It just shows you different values of properties. It shows you different types of properties. Commercial versus ag, so it's just more.
And just to confirm, the 131.5 is the district average.
Yep, medium home value.
Yep.
Yep. And we looked at 4 different data sources and I looked on there out there. So, yep. All right, and then the next page is a graph. So this goes back to tax awareness. People think the taxes are high. All right, so this graph is at the very top, comparison of estimated total tax bill on $131,000 on Kevin Road house. Okay? There's, bold shows up 4 times here. If you go to the bottom, third from the bottom, it says bold baseline, that's where you are now. That's existing. That makes sense? Okay. And you'll see bold option 1, 2, and 3, you'll just see it, that's $10 a month, 15. And all it's doing is making your red portion of your graph bigger each time. Your blue is your operating levy. And the blue is operating levy for all these districts. And the red is your, basically your capital levy for all the districts. So you'll see for all options, like your blue portion doesn't change, it's 307.35, because we're not operational right now. And just your red portion, you know, if you add on that much debt, your red is different. So. That makes sense, right?
So just out of curiosity, so those levels, so goes in, I'm looking at this right now. Bold is probably the 4th highest operating cost on this list, just real quick.
No, you're 307.
You've got Renville County West at 520, Sauk Center at 351, and,
ACGC,
okay, it's 312. I see Benson's 311. Okay, so
311. And then, and Buffalo Tech is 296. I mean, 296 versus 307.
So, but what I'm trying to get at is, what is, like Renville County West is that much higher. What goes into, do you think, their highest operating cost? Or like, is that like on their facility? Is it on their way they pay their teachers?
It's hard to say. They couldn't do anything with it. Could spend it on technology. Could spend it on curriculum. They could spend it on teacher salaries. They could peel a portion of that towards capital projects.
So I guess what I'm getting at is, as we go through, what this isn't reflecting is, like, if we did put in $15 a month, conceivably, if we got more effective or more efficient with what we put in, then that operating portion could drop down. Because you look at like Painesville, that has a newer schools at 177, but they got a higher debt load because of a new school, right?
Yeah, I would be surprised, anything facility probably wouldn't, I mean, yes, you would, if you got more efficient with like heating plant, for example, yeah, that would save you money. I wouldn't advise you dropping your operating levy. That's set up per pupil unit basis, and, because I think this is the board, this is like the 650, is it
624.
624.
And so you have to keep that for so many
It's-
years.
It's whatever the board.
You could drop
You could
it.
drop
Is it
it.
really,
That would be-
It's
Right.
what they're using as.
Well, this is their above and beyond.
It's on
Yeah.
top of what they're already getting, so their
And
kids.
then if you need it back, how,
I want to know, so our $50, that's a year number, correct?
Yes.
So when does that expire? What's currently out there on that small piece left, do you know?
I'll have to get that from Maker. I don't remember the top for this one. It could just be, yeah, I'm not sure what we have.
I missed the
When
first
would
part
it
of that.
be
You're wondering how long we have left on that?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly didn't know we
The
had a referendum, but
$50.
we're still paying for the $50. I mean, it's,
When's the last
I'm just
time you
curious.
did
I-
that?
I don't know. It was 4 years ago.
oh, this-
For capital though?
Oh, no, it was operating.
Yeah. Well, I'll get from Baker, I'll jot that down. We'll get from Baker what comprises that 50 and what's in it. And if there's a sunset to it.
Yeah, I mean, is that, when's the last time we did any remodel expansion? I mean, it's been 20, 30 years. I think.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's not a voter approved referendum. It must be something else that qualifies as a
That was
capital.
just put on, I gotcha.
Yeah, I don't think it was a voter approved portion.
Gotcha. Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I'm
It'd be a
curious.
little helpful to say that little bit's going away.
100%. It could be, does the OPEB, the teachers' retirement that might hit there too.
That might, maybe, do you know?
I don't, I can find out.
It might be something like that, completely unrelated buildings. And it might be calculated as a versus a, but we'll find out. Good
Can you
question.
also maybe look to add McCray on your list of schools, because they just went through a bond
Sure.
in school?
Absolutely. Anybody else you think we should have on others? I didn't debate any direction who to put on it, they just did it themselves. So
Maybe Redwood, just for curiosity.
Okay.
I don't know why I always get Redwood stuff.
So,
Chad said he
Me
gets it
too,
too.
what
I get
in
it
the
too.
world, like,
I didn't get
wow.
that.
Came out.
People were asking me about that.
20-page book they sent
They
every,
sent it to the chamber too, I mean, what in the
it was
world?
very expensive. but-
Yeah.
That was a cheap.
It's like the third thing I got for the Redwood referendum. They wouldn't need a referendum if they just sent it to usually.
Right. Oh, it's
But you're
surprising.
talking about it and helping to have conversations.
That's true.
Yeah, and it's just a few things I like how they worded certain things that. we get to that point, but-
And then the next page is basically the same thing, but on A1. Assuming a $6,700 assessed value, which is average for you. Same thing, make existing $10, 15. So we stick to the 15, kind of puts us in the middle zone. The 15 doesn't put us really out of, puts you on par with the Painesvilles and Benson's on par.
It's like of the 99 cents on this ag land, does the state then pay 70% of that?
This would be the landowner's portion of it.
Okay.
Yes, the state does pay 70% of the ag. And this is what's left on the local farmers. Yep.
Oh, I see now.
So I guess the message here from Baker is, the public sentiment is to spend up to $15 a month. And I'm just showing here at $15 a month, it doesn't put you, it puts you in the middle of the pack, right? It's not super high, not super low. It's reasonable. When we ditch the communication phase of, are you paying too much in taxes? You're paying very similar to your at that $15.
Does it make sense to also add Cedar Mountain if we're trying to look at around our district? I mean, Sauk Center gets kind of far away. You're looking at-
Yeah, I'm not sure what.
Yeah, you want them off. You can take them off.
Morris,
Well, I don't know if you need to take them off. Cedar Mountain might be one that actually,
GFW.
yeah, they connect to our districts.
From an enroll, I know the Minnesota State High School League enrollments just came out, and Granite Falls and GFW enrollment wise are almost identical.
Granite would be a good one too.
Yeah, Granite would be great.
Yeah. So add Granite or Wyoming.
Everybody got on the list yet?
Cray, Redwood, Cedar Mountain, GFW, and Granite.
Thank you.
And Granite is Yellow Medicine East.
Yeah, that's right.
And as soon as we get those, we'll email those out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so.
Well, that's the only other question in there is that I'm just looking at these areas that we have here and the revenue potential per acre in Renville County is much higher than some of these other ones, so that there has to be a little bit of that in the calculations as we go into it, because, a farmer in Renville County might have a little bit more revenue potential, let's say a farmer in Sauk Center, and they're paying, $7. And so the question is, how did they sell that? What did they do? How did they go through that on the revenue potential of the acre? Because I doubt that they're gonna get, their land could be a lot cheaper than that. I don't know. You're the farmer, how would you, it's just the first thing that comes to my mind is that there's a revenue potential that's higher here, because I know when we do contract business, when we go into other states, like we can be up in North Dakota, down here we pay land rent that's probably a third of what we pay up there. I should say other way around, we pay a third of what we pay down here, just because the revenue potential is lower. And so I don't know if that comes into a selling aspect as to what we go in to say that is saying, like you put it on more of a percentage of your revenue potential, or it all comes down to the selling message to where oh my God, that's a big number. Well, wait a second here. It's a percentage that goes through, and I don't know how you calculate that in your farming operations and things like that. I guess that's just the way that I'm thinking about it, because we're gonna have to sell that in some way, shape, or form.
The other thing, I'm sorry.
It's a long answer.
I know.
Right,
I do
because
have that.
I'm sure inputs have gone up quite a bit, and then
Yes.
even though I look at this and some of the land is between 10 and 14,000 that's been selling per acre
Yeah.
too, but you have to remember there's inputs and all kinds of other things too that.
Yeah.
And then the price at market too, depending on what you're growing, so it's a complicated thing, but
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
agree.
it's, what I'm saying is it's a percentage of the revenue that can be produced off of that land versus the cost that, the direct cost there, as far as like you say, the latest land cost is going at $13,000 acre, not $6,700.
Right.
Now, if, remember, one thing you gotta remind people, this is assessed value.
Yeah,
Everybody can find a piece of property that three farmers are fighting over and sells for big money. But if you go through on your GIS site of the county, you click on any parcel, I looked up 20 parcels and they're all right around between 6,000 and 8,000. Most of them are 6 or 7.
County?
Mhm.
What time frame? When did you look it up? Well, sales from what time?
No, not,
just
no, your
assessed
GIS,
value.
on your
Assessed
tax.
value.
Oh,
Assessed
because that's what this would be based on.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, your tax.
Assessed value.
Yeah,
And then too, Brent, on down here on bottom, it says it includes the assumption, the 7% extra school credit. So is that just an assumption that that's gonna be available? Is that?
No, they're just saying, that, they're just basically saying that that's factored in, back to Jim's question. The 70% egg school credit, no, that's not assumption, that's codified in tax revenue law statute. I'll send it to you, the Minnesota Rural Association played a big part in getting that passed years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. For years, it was been argued that, their tax laws in Minnesota were set up for a egg-based economy. Like, what do they call it? We got the Twin Cities here, we got tourism, we got big industry, outstate. It's not fair how referendums work outstate. And they lobbied forever, and we got the pass, which was great, so, no, it's law, it's not going anywhere, it's a great thing for farmers. That 70% is covered by the state. So, yeah.
My understanding on that was a Republican-led initiative that got bipartisan support because the Democrats were excited to get funding.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. When you think about it, it came from outstate. Outstate is very, very red.
Yeah.
It is very much Republican-led. So, yeah, it's not going anywhere.
And so there's a little bit of concern since it is so red and it benefits the red that the law doesn't have to go away. And I'm not saying I think it will, but I like the way Redwood listed it. Assumptions, assuming it stays in place, where I just think we want to be careful to say that's not a guaranteed thing because we've seen laws change and
Yeah.
it highly incentivizes, it's a benefit to rural Minnesota. And with our current Democratic-led legislature,
I'll find out. I'll get the data. Yeah, people who want to fearmonger will twist that into see. You better not do it. They're going to change the law. They're just setting it up, and that's false. That's absolutely not true. I'll get the count. I'll get the vote when it was passed, whatever, and see how much is Republican this thing. I think it was very strong bipartisan, but that's and you're right.
and honestly, it doesn't matter what it is today because tomorrow leadership changes. So. But I think my point is, yeah, I think it will, and I hope it does. But we just don't want to guarantee that. We can't word it and make sure the wording is correct when whatever we come up with to say that.
Well, then what I recommend is let's get legal review on would you be grandfathered in.
You're not, I checked it, it was right. So it's a law, I can change any time now.
But your federal income tax could be changed to 70%.
Absolutely. I mean, everything's changed, everything can change. So my point is just, let's just make sure it's worded properly that people can't come back to the school and say,
Yeah, I wish now that they had it sort of phased in, it was 50%, 55, 60, now it's capped at 70. I wish they'd get away from, I don't know, I think. they'd do
I say if
that.
they truly want, why don't they just pay it up front? I mean, that would be the simple, takes all of it away. Say, okay, you guys built a new school, here's your money.
Yep.
It's done. Yeah, that's the concern. Why put it over 20, 30 years. If they really want to just do it and have it be a clear program, just give me the money up front. And the law doesn't have to go away, but as farmers, we see a lot of, well, school, special ed, things that we're supposed to get reimbursed for, the ones get reimbursed for. Law doesn't have to go away, but it can not be funded very easily. So those are my concerns with it.
The nice thing, this isn't I hear what you're saying, the good thing about that, it's a revenue line, it's not an annual appropriations thing. You know, it's not like a bonding bill where they have to fight over and see what makes the cut. It's just, it's a revenue law, so. I do wanna get legal opinion on it, so I understand that, so. Cause part of me is like,
Yeah.
if it, put it this way, if it wasn't passed, those numbers would be crazy, and probably gonna be complaining that the tax laws stink. So then we fix the tax laws, and people go, well, I don't know, it's really, it's
It's a
I feel bad though.
fantastic program. They should just do it in front, so it's done.
So, we heard loud and clear $15 a month, at least I did, and I think, hope you guys did too. What does that mean in the concepts we looked at so far? On a $131,500 house, concept A is $37 a month, B is 37, C is 42, D is 44, and E is 53. So, we started here, we started with something that we felt was, we'd really like to do, and then we sort of kind of went this direction, kept looking at bigger things. The reality is, what we gotta live with is, we gotta get this down to 15. Something down to 15. And the reason I point here, because I'm starting at the low end of the scale. It's easier to go from 37 to 15 to this, 53 to 15. Now, obviously, some of these things, auditorium comes out, right? Those are easy things to come out. Stadium, we talked about stadium work and parking lots and pool didn't test well. It just tells me the pool wall, I know you're getting some stuff done with insurance claim right now. The pool wall and the track resurfacing, I recommend we do with a bond and LTFM project, take care of that off the side, not end up within a referendum. And then we focus on coming up with a solution that, you know, you've got your infrastructure in this building. I know you have a plumbing issue right now. We gotta get the bones of the building rejuvenated, in both buildings, frankly. So we've gotta take care of any rotted plumbing, and we've gotta take care of at least, Danny's still here. We gotta at least take care of, replace the condensate systems on both buildings. We're gonna come back when the boilers are down here, or can be shut down for a while when it's warmer. We can have the boilers off for a while. We're gonna, you know, Danny showed you the pipe that's rotted out, and we all agree that the condensate's gone. We're gonna pull apart some of the steam supply side, and we might look at, financial reality forces us to look this way is, can we reuse the steam side? Can we stay steam and just replace the condensate side? We use the steam piping, use it for hot water. Is it big enough to do that with it? So we're gonna take a hard look at getting your heating and plumbing fixed so you don't have these issues like they're dealing with right now. And then what do we have left over out of that 30 million? What can we do for, say that's infrastructure is 6 million, let's pick a number. That means we've got 24 million to spend. How can we accomplish as much as what the staff said they value, what the staff says they need? What can we do? I think it's going to be, the boiler plant here is going to have to stay where it is, get relocated. I think the 2-story building here is going to have to stay. I would still like to get the 1922 section demoed out of here. Right here. And then, like I said, I can wait on air conditioning and see what we can get.
So we kind of just want direction on what you guys think.
We just did a quick little recap of the survey, basically saying, there's support, there's awareness there that facilities need addressing. There's support there up to a certain amount, and it's really a tax hustle. We gotta live within the $15 a month.
What does that do for long term? So when you look down the future, if you don't do the boiler as you anticipated, what does that do? Like, are we setting ourselves up for issues just 10 years down the road?
No, I wouldn't do anything that, no, I'd make sure you had, anything we did had at least 10 years, if not 20 years at least in it. I think we're gonna, I don't know until we looked at the steam site if we can use it. I hope it's in good shape. The condensate alone is getting expensive to replace all that. It's not, like it's pennies on the dollar, so. Your boilers here have life left in them, the boilers at Bird Island do not. I'd still replace your boilers. You know, I'll give you new boilers, give you new steam traps, new condensate return system. So you have a good functioning system that should get a lot of life out of it, so.
But do we start, we question, like, do we start
Yeah,
from option A and work backwards, or do we start, I mean, that's where we need direction on what your thoughts are on where we start. I mean, and we can come back from that point, you know, with things to cut and ideas from
No,
that.
I think we work the other way. I think we turn around and say, what has to happen or the building's gonna fall down? Because regardless of what we do, the building's gotta stay operational while we're going through this. So what's the worst thing we have that needs to be addressed today? And we start going from that aspect of it and say, this needs to be done. And if it's not done in this referendum, it'll have to be done in LTM because the school's not gonna be open next year if we don't do it. You know, I think there's support in the community for a school district, that was clear. They want the school here. And I think the way I read the message is fix what we have, we'll be fine. That's really what I, you know, and I think they'll be okay. If we lay it out and saying, we gotta spend, you know, $35 million just to fix what we have, because that's what the budget turns out when we look at it, I think we can pass that through the school. Just by sitting around saying, look, we've got this old facility, this is what it's gonna take to do it. We can put a new boiler in for this amount of money, and it's gonna cost us this much to operate it, or we can spend a little bit more and put this type of a heating system in, and we're gonna save this money operationally down the road. Things like those types of questions, I think we need to start as we go through, but I don't say we wanna scrap what we have, but I think we need to look at it completely different based upon the results of this thing. We need to start looking at what do we need to replace, and we go from there. And then really what's gonna come down to is, the question's gonna come down to is how important is the Bird Island facility and what do we need to do over there? And at what point do we stop over there? And what point do we say, you know what, it makes more sense to finish over there? Like, for instance, if we decide to say we want to do K through 6, for instance, over in Bird Island, what does it take to do that? If it's not operational, we turn around and say, okay, so if we were going to do, you know, kindergarten or pre-K or, you know, some other programs, what's feasible over in that facility right now to get it operational, to make it work? And I think we need to come up with that number, because that's all figures into it. Because if 50% of the people figure we have to do something in Bird Island, if we don't do something in Bird Island, we could be losing those 50% of those people. If they're 40% of the persuadables, they might automatically go no.
Right, now, the Bird Island, I think Elliot will pass the slides there, we'll pull up. The Bird Island, we'll pull up the slides.
I think it was like 50% or something, 50.
Yeah, it was, I think if I remember, should got it. I think highly important was like 17.
The big thing that was, yeah, something, but
The sentiment, what I took up when Peter took out of it, and we asked him that question is, there's a sentiment to do, people are willing to do something for Bird Island. Then we kind of tested different things, and nothing really stood out. You know, I think we asked to make it elementary again, 24% said, yeah, let's do that.
it was
But
very scattered.
That also
on what-
means
yeah.
76% of people say, no, let's not do that, so.
Yeah.
It comes down to the tax impact. You got $15 a month to spend. You're gonna be limited, frankly, you're gonna be limited. You're that's why I always said, do we start with A? I still think you could get your boilers fixed at Bird Island, get your new bleachers, get some stage and lighting work done, get your bathrooms refreshed and 2 locker rooms. As far
And
as,
that one dropped down. I guess I just look at the numbers and going, okay, if you take 2, 4, 5, 6 million to go put ground work and our kids aren't there, then what are we doing here? Like, how do we?
well, that's where that's where I kind of think we're coming from is I encourage us to. Just like we did before, if you remember, we started with Olivia and everything moved to Brad. I think we do the same thing. What does it take to get this building? All the free units fixed, right? Set you up good long term. And deal with some of the educational aspects you need to, you know. So like I said, to keep that two-story section, I think we can make some good improvements here, and I think we'll have enough money to make some improvements at Rhode Island. I think that's your best bang for the $15. If you try to make 2 schools on $15 a month, you don't have money. Yeah, this was the one that, as Peter calls, this is a poster's nightmare. It's nothing stands out.
Other than something has to happen.
On there, 8% is saying no, and 17 are unsure, but the rest, there's all seeing something to be done, and I wanna argue that a little bit with you. I was just looking over your plan, and I can think of Rhode Island, how you can feasibly bring those kids back at a minimal cost. For one, we can renovate the lunch area, we could put all new kitchen stuff in. We fed K through 12 kids in that lunchroom area for years. So the lunchroom could stay for receiving everything in the spot where it is. We don't have to get rid of the choir room. The choir room is fine. You can use the choir room. As far as the old 2-story, we have to take that down anyway, and that's like $1 million to take that down. So you're gonna have that little gap there. You could bring Kate, we got plenty of rooms. We've got 900 square feet rooms. You said there were like 1,200 square feet over here. We can bring K through 6 back or K through 4 really easy, because in that open area, you fill a few classrooms and a hallway in, and that'll get you to the old gym where the locker rooms are. We can repurpose that stage with amazing sound system, with some acoustic panels in that gym, and make it a really nice for what we have right now, for uses right now. It could be a multi-purpose gym. It can be used for our play in the spring, the one in the musical, whatever we do with those 2 things we do there, and other than that, we can use that gym again and put in the locker rooms. With just those few things, I think that would make an elementary school right there. And then for Olivia, we can look at that picture too. If they're taking out the auditorium, my thoughts were I've gone through the tour so many times. They have the science room up on the 2nd level. Instead of using that for science, let's get this a tech school over here. Let's use that science room for storage and bring that science area down in the elementary wing, and let's start putting in science. Let's figure out something where we can do culinary, whatever other tech things in there, carpentry, you name it. Let's get a tech school going over here for the high school students. Leave the district office where it is, and just use what we have and come up with numbers like that. You can X out so much of this other stuff. Maybe look into an optional fitness area. Maybe right now the wrestlers are gonna have to use that small gym for wrestling like they did before, for now. And then we can have a plan where we can do, this is phase 1 to get us to where we need to be. We can use these schools. And phase 2 in a few years down the road, and let people know we'd like to do a phase 2 and a phase 3 to keep incorporating things. But the thing is we have to get back to the education part. No one talks about the tech side of it. It's all about just the buildings. Well, yes, we have to fix the buildings. That is extremely important to have a functional school. But we have to start thinking long-term what tech things we're gonna be bringing in for those kids that don't go to college, and make this kind of a multi-purpose school. Or schools. And I think it's very important, I've done research too and read articles where it's very important to keep the elementary away from the high school. Hutch does it, there's elementary, middle school, high school. We have buildings, we have brick and mortar here already. Let's best utilize what we have.
Well, yeah, I mean, Hutch, when you have enough critical size, it makes sense to have separate buildings. I have no problem investing. Well, I just don't think we have to have the $15 to give you. I agree with your sentiment about tech ed. I want to sit with Brett and the tech ed instructors and get that area laid out. I agree with you, we can set it up for multi-phases. I totally agree. It really comes down to, is this a referendum to open Bear Island as an elementary?
Absolutely.
I know, but that's where you can come increase the entire time. I get that. It's, if that's what you want, that's what everybody wants, we'll go that
I
direction.
think the pie showed it too. It didn't show just in one area, but there was like, they wanted something, the pie where they wanted absolutely nothing was small, but a lot of people don't know. Have you been through the tours here? Hardly anybody comes to the tours. There's a lot of,
Right.
the public doesn't even realize what's in these buildings.
The, there's also the operational impact.
I'm really struggling to show that.
I'm sorry, I thought it was in the break utility.
I'm sorry that I didn't have it.
You found it?
That's another
Yeah, I'm
thing
trying
too.
to pull it up on here.
Is it on your screen?
Yeah.
Another thing too, is during all the remodeling, we have to have, if we do work on that first to get the kids over there, then when we do this tour for the high school kids or vice versa, you gotta be able to not interrupt teaching.
So, we'll email this to you too. I thought it was in this. We forgot to put it in the back here. Jim and his admin ran numbers on what it takes to run 2 schools versus 1, and Jim shared those numbers with all of you. They're on the, we had Baker Tilly run, what would, so jump, you jump back to our summary slide. Is it up?
You're amazing, Ally. I'd have had it ruined by now.
Summary, like,
The very last slide. There you go. So we talked about the tax impacts. We also did annual operating, this is the numbers that Jim gave us, the estimated annual facilities operating costs. So these option 1 and 2 are basically the same, 2.25, whatever. You start running elementary schools over there, you're jumped to about 2.6, so it's about 400.
So the only difference though is that you're adding, all the time you're changing these next concepts, you're adding and changing the Olivia schools. So if you left, that's why the price keeps going up. If you go through here, you'll see that the wing keeps changing, so that's adding cost. So I don't know if that's a real good depiction of cost.
you're talking operational.
Operational.
Well, we're running that school, right? We're heating that entire school.
Yeah,
It's not- This is
it's
all
not just-
staffing.
It's not,
Right.
it's not saying it,
But the staff will follow the students.
the teachers do, the support staff does it. Whenever you close a school, you save money. Whenever you add a school, it costs more. You can, I'll let you guys talk to your operational dollars. We study, I run the numbers, I can't defend it. It's reasonable, because when districts are closing, the savings they get when they close to a school, elementary, is in the $300,000 to $500,000 range. We have not seen that. I've never gone this way of opening a school, but do you want to speak to that at all?
These,
I guess I wasn't, yeah, no, I know what you're looking at. I mean, if you have 2 houses, it takes more to clean them, it takes more to maintain them. I don't know, I guess I wasn't ready to talk about that here today, but it's just, it's more.
But would you say today we're doing it adequately because you don't have enough staff, right? Like
Well,
you're
yeah,
short
we can't even find enough staff. to do
maintenance
this
staff.
work.
For sure.
Teaching staff.
We've
Yeah,
been-
We're down
so
to 3 right now.
your budget isn't, like, you can propose your budget, but it's reality right now, your budget's under because you're not able to do it because you don't have the manpower.
Paras, for sure, paras, kitchen.
Well, one thing nice too is if we start replacing things, if we don't get all of South Central.
So that's,
But that's changing.
but that's in addition.
And that's where like, we got $15 to spend.
I think,
Do we make 2 band-aided buildings and make 1 good building? That's what you guys gotta talk. And you might not have decided and discuss it amongst yourselves and let us know what you're doing. We don't have a horse in the race there. One thing I wanted to show you though is 3, 500 more to run 2 buildings. It doesn't matter.
I might even add that you make more money if we make the project bigger. So
There's more fees there, yes.
the fact that you're trying to keep this small,
we're
trying to
just
make
trying to
it-
get it passed,
trying to make it
right?
pass.
Yeah.
You got crushed 83 to 17 before. It wasn't only because they didn't know what they're getting. the tax tolerance here flat out tells you, don't do that again, you're gonna get smoked. We gotta live with that.
And if we
Right,
can't
but
get
I
it to
still
pass now, what happens?
Well, the biggest thing is that's exactly why I'm saying we need to attack this from the standpoint of this is what it's gonna take to get the buildings going. One of the biggest reasons, there was another big reason I think that you're not playing good enough, is one of the reasons why people voted no was because of everything that happened to the Bird Island School District. People were really upset about that. If we go into this not addressing that again or out in front of it, it doesn't matter. We can come in at $12 and everybody's gonna say, screw you, that's not what we want. That is gonna
But
happen.
define what has to happen.
But that's our job,
Yeah.
is we gotta go through and we gotta figure out what is the bare minimum to keep the doors open. And then based upon what we figure out those bare minimums are, okay, how much money do we have left? What's the best way to go through it? We gotta get the heating and cooling system done or the heating system's done at both schools. That's the thing. We gotta get them waterproofed. We gotta do roofs or whatever it is to make sure we keep them functional. Then we can turn around and say, oh, it'd be nice to add this tech center, or it'd be nice to move this building, or let's move the kids over here. What does that take? It all starts from what do we have to have, then what do we have left, and where do we go from there?
Agreed.
And if you're saying have to have, when we look at Bird Island, is it a phased approach to bring kids back? To get us, at least to get the first step of, we've got that up to $30 million to fix infrastructure with a phased approach of if we do this, phase 2, we can look at this.
Well, like you said, even if you came in at 12 and you don't include anything with Rhode Island,
But I'm not saying you wouldn't include, I'm just saying you
No,
wouldn't
no,
focus on
yeah.
the kids right away, you would focus on making the space there usable and it's more community with phase 2 of, once we get this done, we can go back again and then we can expand to make them classrooms.
Right, no, and you're right. I think the biggest thing is we need to figure out where we stand after we do what we have to do. And I think we start with the bare minimums and we start going from there. And I think it's easy on the bare minimums.
And is this part of that brush fire survey?
But no, that'll be later. I philosophically agree with you, Pat. You start from the ground up, build it up. Don't start at an option cut. Start up. I get that. Where it's gonna get a little tricky is, okay, you gotta fix the elementary wing here. You know, if you're gonna keep it, use it for school, that elementary wing over here needs a lot of, you know, what are you gonna do? You know, if you're gonna abandon that wing, you don't have to spend anything there. You can spend it at Bird Island. If you're gonna use that wing, you gotta spend it there. You don't have as much to spend at Bird Island. You're gonna have to come to a point. It's gonna come to a point where, yes, we have to do something Bird Island. We have to keep that usable for something. At least, I see it as least to sports, at bare minimum, and sports and performances. But you're gonna have to make that choice. This whole thing about opening up the school again is what you really gotta get your heads around. We'll send this to you, so I thought it was in the packet. All this was, as Baker Tilly, operational dollars. So the blue, what color was it? On this graph, the blue on this graph. If you said, all right, fine, we're gonna have 2 schools, and yes, we can discuss the impact of that, dollar impact. There is a budget implementation of 2 schools. Let's just ask the district, ask taxpayers for more revenue. So maybe that's what's gonna get asked. So we said for, operating, so how much does it cost to raise $300, 300,000 more annual revenue, or 500 more revenue? Just for Baker Tilly to went to. On that same average house, 131,000, these are annual numbers now. So your existing is here, to get 300 more, you go to here, the delta is this. So to raise 300,000 more in annual revenue, you're basically $10 a month. So you just spent 2/3 of your $15 tax willingness, if you would, on the operating side. So, and obviously it's 500,000 more. So I just thought you should have that data point, send it to you.
Well, I want to say, I really like what you guys have put together here, I think. And honestly, the survey, I like the results. I don't like the results, but I think they're accurate results.
Based on the discussions I've had.
Yeah, so I like how you laid out what our dollars are, what our options are, and I agree with you, the same track. Kind of in between, I think, what you're both saying, so, yeah, the heating stuff has to get done here.
Yep.
So I think maybe we all put together our list, or Denny, you guys, of the absolutely have to have necessity list. We get those crossed off the list of this. To me, Bird Island, at a bare minimum, the old structure comes down. I mean, if nothing else, Denny, that'll save a lot of operating. I know we don't have to heat. You know, you're all aware, we're heating that dumb thing now. Get that old thing down, at least make a gravel, or a granite parking lot, something there. So I think if we put together that list and say, okay, you've got 2 million there at a minimum, you got however many million here, and kind of start a little bit at the bottom up and say, okay, this is our have to do list.
Yep.
And then the pool, I normally would not like that LTFM. To me, that's kind of like, I just don't like forcing anything on it. I think this is a little different since the city of Olivia has some skin in the game. I don't know if that's resolved, but it'd really be nice to have that in stone so everyone knows exactly where they are. I know I have that agreement now, but it's pretty vague agreement. That would just be nice to have done in stone so we all agree where that's at.
I think to that point, now knowing from the survey of the dollar amount, because talking to the city before, well, if our survey came back and they were gonna support $50 a month, we wouldn't have this, the conversation would be totally different. So
Right.
now, at least knowing you can go back to the city and say, the pool's not gonna make that top cut, so what do we wanna do? And have that conversation with Tracy, the city officials, and figure out where do we.
And it's a little easier to pull it out of the general school referendum because it is a little bit of a different deal. Otherwise, I'd hate to just force something on somebody at the same time you're trying to do a referendum. But since this is a little bit of a science here.
Just to clarify, this was a bond in LTFM, this would be inside your current revenue, this wouldn't be attached to that.
Oh,
So it's within your amount that you get every year now, you just take a portion of that and cover it.
oh, so it's already there. Okay,
Yeah.
it's not added.
So those two, and the track, the borings were done on the track, the geotechnical engineer is looking at the boring, you should have a report by the end of this week, early next week. So Teresa had a good idea, let's, that track's been there long enough, we're gonna know what's actually underneath that track, and we're gonna define it, we're gonna just do a mill it off, put a new one, fix these hot spots, and a new track on.
Okay, drainage maybe.
We're not expanding the parking lot, we're not gonna have huge building additions, we're not gonna have to deal with that more expanding that pond, which would be nice. So I think we can get there. Again, it's a little bit of a, like I said, wet blanket in the face of $15 a month, but it's still $30 million.
Right.
We can get a lot done.
It's better
for
than
$30
a
million.
$5 or $10.
Yeah, you can get, I mean, it's nothing to sneeze at, you can get a lot done for $30 million. So let us go back, I think the big thing is this heating systems and the plumbing system at both buildings. And getting that, coming back with some options for you there.
And getting at least that old part of Rhode Island now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just,
What concerns me is that the public votes on something and all it is infrastructure. They don't see anything that's happening. They say, well, $30 million, all we do is fix the heatings.
I do think this is what I was going to, and I think it'll be more self-evident when you see them. Instead of coming back that we did like these bundles, I want to come back with just a list of projects. And you guys can build it, and we can look at different projects.
Shopping list, you know.
But I think I just did some back of the napkin type stuff, and I think we can still fix what needs to be fixed and keep the buildings operational and infrastructure. And we can still make some really good improvements in education accuracy, at least at this building, for sure.
What is $40 million per couple? What number is that? No, we're looking at 15. If we go, they keep it under 40 million.
We looked at that, yeah, it's on that.
Yeah, it won't, yeah, you heard Peter say you're targeting about $14, I won't go much over 15. If you go to, $20 a month gives you between 36 and 40, about $5 a month. And I'm fine with it, I weren't here, Greg, I think that portion, but I was like, at least question one, have her at the $15 one. You'd have multiple questions on the ballot, right? If you wanna go for a stretch.
I was gonna say, cause you could, like extend that center, if you as a question too.
Yeah.
Maybe
And,
not.
and that's where the brush, once we get down to what this base project is, that brush fire survey can test some of that question two stuff and help you figure out what to put that question to.
But if you get, like, let's say the track, you can put a price together to fix that, like are there grants, are there other things you can go after? Maybe there's someone in our community that is a lifetime lover of the track and has a big passion to help. The tech center, well, what if we had $1 amount and said, okay, what do we wanna put in this, how do we partner? Granted, I know our businesses are gonna already be taxed on it, but maybe it's an opportunity for them to get future employees. So how do we work with them, or what does that funding look like? So I think if we have price points on some of these extra pieces, there's maybe alternative funding that we can look at too. With the pool, can they get some legacy grant dollars to help?
I mean, that's a good point. The government of Minnesota has $17 billion burning a hole in their pocket. They want to give it to everybody. Can we go in with our hand out?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, it's burning a hole. They just can't give it away fast enough. They just can't agree to
In
give
a
it.
way, isn't that what Island Hub's trying to do?
What's that?
Isn't that what Island Hub's trying to do?
Has anybody heard that they have been awarded something for that?
They haven't
I've
yet.
heard it on the radio.
They are on the list for the bonding bill.
No, but what I'm getting at is they're talking about taking a lot of that 17 billion and giving it into the educational system. Is there something out there for educational facilities which were different than what Island Hub is trying to do or something? It's like, hey, we're trying to, maybe they turn around and say, well, here's $10 million, fix your boiler systems to keep your school open. Okay, so now we take that off our referendum list.
I'm not worried, I would.
And I don't know who,
I
How do
would,
we find those people?
you,
And
you
I-
start with,
Doug,
you start with your representatives.
Yeah, you would have to.
You get your representatives in here.
And you still have to have matching funds,
As
which
far as grants.
no, they got $17 billion they want to get rid of.
Haven't you gone out about?
Well, I'm just saying, if that's where you
$3
throw it
billion
back in the conversation, get rid of it, how about to a worthy cause? You're talking about education, come on,
Yeah,
a little bit,
that's it. Let's be friends.
Is
yeah.
there anything for tech school?
I've not gone, I don't into the grants. We just applied for some federal grants and we got discouraged to do the full application. I've dug and anyone feel free to dig.
I think the best thing is
I
to
have
bring in
not found any grants out there.
your state representative, state senator that represents, have them come in here and ask these questions to them. They're the ones that are gonna have to carry the water.
and they have a long list of proposals, I do know that. From around the state, for bonding,
Well,
that $17-18 billion.
Just one thing to speak to what Todd said a little bit ago about, the public not seeing anything new. The public, if we do a gym in Rhode Island, that's the majority of what the public sees. I mean, the gym, the track, the public doesn't come into the classrooms very often. So when you're talking about them being able to visibly see, if you do a gym in Rhode Island, they'll see just as much as if you would do a gym in a K4, because they're not in the K4 very often. So not to totally promote my gyms being remodeled, but that's, the public faces of the school are the athletic facilities, because that's where people come to gather and see the school.
But unfortunately, the survey was adamantly opposed to anything having to do with extracurricular performance and stadiums.
It was more stadiums, yeah. And that counters the Rhode Island, I get that. I think at a minimum, Rhode Island has to have the gym, the stage, the locker rooms, the restrooms, all of that taken care of. I totally agree with people that there.
Option A, right?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I like that idea over there, the minimum that happens there. Ventilations, the systems, the roofs, and then we see what we have left.
That gives us marching orders.
I also do go back to how do we use community partners like that tech
Right.
area.
Could be. I like your idea. Put those little pieces, like you said, you find the one person that's important to, or that's important to. And you could approach those and,
You know, I mean,
put
Or
their
maybe
name
there's
on
a
it.
few people, yeah, exactly.
people want,
Name
Kirsten
recognition.
Tech Center, I like the sound.
you know, we got a new scoreboard for stadium there. I don't put that in, but, you know, a lot of people put advertising on the scoreboard, you know, or some donates that, you know, fundraise for things like that. I totally agree. I think the minimum out here, we gotta fix the track. And we gotta fix this drainage right here. Those two things. And then on the east side, we won't make the parking lot any bigger, but I do wanna fix the in, so we got an in and out. I wanna fix just the circulation there. If you move the front door that side, you gotta just make it work a little bit better.
But you don't have to put in a whole new parking lot.
No,
Can you move the front door to that side without doing any major remodeling? Does that still work or flow? Is that a possibility?
No, the idea was to get the, you know, elementary and high school, and this route was consolidated, just from a productivity and a visitor control entrance thing and all that, so. Let us look at it. I think there's a good chance we can get, if we leave the two-story, if we leave science, band, and choir where they are, we'd have to, new cafeteria, new art, that, you get that 1922 out of there. I still think we can have it. Still think we can get dang close to that 30 million.
I'm not saying it's a good idea.
I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying that's the only thing, that's,
Yeah,
I was just giving you an,
yeah.
scale
But the
thing.
only reason to move the door is to try to bring the elementary and the high school and, you know, sort of have the common point of entrance and everything. Well, now we're back saying, okay, is that money better spent over into a separate facility to get into? Because I can guarantee you, I know when I came from Illinois, they made it a point to separate high school kids from the elementary kids, just from the standpoint of high school kids act differently than elementary kids. And you don't want some of those behaviors to go across lines. I mean, that's just the basic things of it. So the question is, can we do that here and economically go ahead and take that, which gets back into what Teresa's been saying. And that's what we need to look at. So that's where we get down to have to happen. We don't have to move that. We don't have to do that. We're doing that to accommodate if we're gonna keep everything here. Question is if we're gonna spend $6 million to do that here, can we spend $6 million in Rhode Island and accomplish the same thing? That's the question we need to figure out. And then does that help better with public perception to get it passed? Because ultimately, no matter what we do, we still gotta get it passed.
And then room to watch your operations too.
The operational costs are gonna, we can argue all day long on operational costs.
I'm just saying to be cautious of them because we can't go turn around to the public and say we need more money to operate if we can't.
Mhm. But, you know, there are some costs that are gonna track and are gonna move. And I'm not sure, you know, and I don't know, we can go into those costs all day long, because I think I have some questions on those numbers, because I don't see how they would jump that much. If you take this whole staff and area that take care of this and move it over there, you might hire some more cooks, you might hire a couple janitors, but it's not $300,000.
right.
That's some of the costs that we need to talk about if we get into that aspect of it. But again, I didn't go through the numbers. I'd be interested to see the numbers. They just don't make sense to me right now, just thinking about it, because you move all of your administration and facility and support that are here for elementary, we move there. What I don't know is if there's some common support for counselors or things like that that you have to have or required by code to have or something to that effect. But anyways, that's beside the point. So I wouldn't worry about that aspect as much as, let's see what we can do to get built first.
I think it also depends on our leadership here, right? Like none of us are teachers, we're not the ones in the classroom, we're not admins of the school. So maybe what we think isn't the best idea of splitting the kids up, and they see it from a different perspective.
That was a good point.
So,
Well, we are taxpayers, and if you want buy-in, people have spoken before, and there's a lot of comments out there. The buy-in will adjust. I think we need to just address that. If you're just gonna pretend, or let's not even address it, let's at least explore that and have that option out there. We need to explore it.
and I understand that, and totally I understand it's driven by taxpayers, but I also think if we can educate our community on the benefits of maybe being split or maybe being together, that has to be communicated out as well, because I don't walk those footsteps, I don't understand, I'm still a taxpayer, but if someone could explain to me the benefit of one building and what you see as the kids are all together, if that's a benefit, or if you see it separately, like, we should be able to communicate that back to the taxpayers.
Well, we have to.
Right, but you should be able to, like, we should lean on the people in those positions to help educate all of us.
One data point, just got not to lose sight of all of this, is when we did that staff survey way back when, we asked about Rhode Island, and the resounding one there, it was, yes, keep it open for sports. Asked the question about moving back to school, and then we even asked about just early childhood, and both as a school and the early childhood were not supported by your staff, by the teachers. It was-
And the other thing that I've heard a lot of is a lot of interaction. I know high schoolers act differently, I get that, but you even said like on the day that the pool, like the older kids took care of the little kids, and I've heard a lot of, they come in and work with the younger kids too when they're on the same site. That's just feedback that I've heard.
Student teaching.
Well, and you can also look at it this way, you won't have two soft targets in one building, so you keep that separate. And then if there is a disruption in one building, it doesn't disrupt everybody. You have two separate buildings for those, and
Good and bad for both sides.
exactly.
Yeah,
I
was
just,
gonna
I
say.
just feel like we need to lean on those, in those positions. I guess that's my point is, we can discuss all we want, but we see it from one side. We're not the ones teaching, we're not leadership, we're not seeing how it all works. Again, it's not my background, so I might think I know everything in one particular area, but I really don't, because they're the ones that see it. So that's my point, is I just feel like we need to rely on those individuals.
And the data, I'm relatively new to this committee, obviously, but like, I feel like that's what I've been hearing over and over again, like, we have to rely on what the people want in the data, and like, this is the data, you know, we've gotten the answers from the survey. We need to pay attention to what the people have said.
All right, we will, kind of take a look at bottom up. Shopping list pulled together, it's gonna take a little time, especially on the seating plan stuff, because I really want to inspect, so much of your system, so there's no surprises. Worst thing to do is do something and then have a problem in 2 years, so. Let us get that figured out, then we can figure out what we can do from an education standpoint. Kind of go on what Pat's saying. And you guys can talk about, you guys can reach out to your legislators, you guys can meet and talk about the operational impacts, numbers. Encourage you guys to do that while we're working on the technical side. Come back together, so.
Good, yeah, no, again, I like how you laid it out. I think you did a nice job on that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, like I said, everyone's got, try to take the motion out of it, try to listen to the data, and we can do a lot of it to figure it out. Just give it a try, let's keep it that way.
I will say, it's nice to see all the support from the survey. I wasn't sure what we would see just because you get into these things, so there was a lot of positive. I think the only negative, and it's still a positive, was probably the dollar amount, right? So,
Yeah, and that's the thing about a phased approach, if you did something unrelated, you did some things down the road, it's just the economic times when everything on the news is all pending recession, and we've been hearing it year after year. It's the negativity, I think, impacts people too, and inflation we're all experiencing. Once that's normalized, then you can come back with phase two.
and do you show that to the public right away? Like, here's phase one, here's phase two, or do you just focus on phase one?
I'm focused on phase one right now, focus on what's right in front of you, but just do it smartly.
Is our phase two might change based on how things change.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it out there.
Because again, and I'm gonna go back to handle this, kind of funny, my daughter just spent 6 years getting a master's in English education, and she spent the last 2 years teaching, TAing at Ball State, and she did her internships and everything. And she's graduating in May, and she is it's her opinion right now that the educational system in the US is set up for the students to fail. And her big thing about that is that the states that are setting some of the curriculum, this is what she's telling me, the states that are setting curriculums are more content-based than competency-based. And so what happened is you're forcing some of these students to learn things because it's mandated by government rather than whether they're interested in learning. And so you're trying to take a round hole and put it into a square, square peg into a round hole, whatever it is. There's some kids that have no desire to learn and comprehend, something having to do with the philosophy, but you put them in front of an engine and they just love it. Or you put them out in front of a plow or ag side or cooking, things to that effect. And we got into a big discussion. My brother graduated here in 1978. And when he was leaving, they were just getting started with this whole new technology wing. They were moving toward the VOTEC aspect of it. So in the late 70s, they put the whole, I think that's when these wings were built over here where the shop is and things like that. Yeah, they just started moving with the whole vocational wing. They had a culinary kitchen over there. They had typing. They had a business school. They had the industrial arts. They had all of that was all set up in the technology wing. And then I graduated in 85. By the time I graduated college, it had become, so from that late 70s to the middle to late 90s, it's like, boy, if you don't have a 4-year degree, you ain't worth shit. So they started forcing everybody into a 4-year degree college, and that's when our college campuses started to explode, and they can't have a building over 3 years old and all this kind of stuff. And now here we are coming back, and now we're seeing the same thing. Now it's like, well, maybe we need to bring the VOTEC knowledge and stuff back. And I don't think we need to lose sight of it as we're going through. So when you get back to the point of saying, well, we need to walk those shoes because they're see it all the time. I agree to that to a point because everybody's input is important for like now, but I also think we need to see what the trends are going on. And I think you can see there's a big backlash coming just with obviously the stuff that gets all of the news is, some of the contents that's going into school or school boards and what are you teaching our kids and all that's publicized, but there's a rumbling going on on the lower levels too, from the standpoint of my kid doesn't care about second level calculus. Why does he have to take it?
I think.
And I think that there's going to be a push for that over the next years. And I don't think we need to lose sight of that as we're building this. Can we be on the front of it? Or do we want to play catch up again? And again, we're not going to know that, but people that are in it right now will, but it may not necessarily be just here either.
I think that's the exciting thing with Rob Vanderhagen right now on staff, right? Like you have students that are in there that don't want to be in calculus probably, and they're able to do the things that they really love, and he's training them to go out and get that job, right? Mm-hmm. So I think, and he's made great relationships in our community and have that community support. So I think he's like kickstarting it right now along with the school, just looking at it from a different perspective. A lot of great stories coming out of what he's doing.
But again, it's just, and again, that gets back to what I'm saying is I think there is, in my opinion, in the next couple of years, there's going to be some changes as to how our educational system is in the United States. It's going to be a slow moving boat because we got this big mass, but I think there are going to be some emphasis coming back, basically from the standpoint of we're not going to find enough labor to do some of these jobs that have traditionally been filled by vocational students. And I think the vocational students are going to start coming back. So it's going to be like, well, how do we get those kids earlier? And I think there's going to be a move for that.
Does BVE have those pods like Alexandria does, where you can pick, like Alex, you can pick, I want to do a healthcare career when we get into.
Yeah,
They call it the
Jagways, yeah, we just went there yesterday. Phenomenal.
Yeah, they have these career paths that you can choose.
Yeah, they have 3. Couldn't tell you exactly what they are, but there's one's like CTE, one's like health and human services, and then probably business. But yeah, it's interesting how they do that and kind of upset the apple cart.
What they did years ago is they had their board look at the local graduation requirements and they removed some of those to give some freedom and flexibility in their schedule so that kids can take electives that are more in line with what they hope to do as a career. And I talked to Pat Walsh about this many times. He's their superintendent, and they really believe strongly that if you have to have this math class and you have to have, but you're going to go into welding, we'll take the welding class that's offered at the same time as this math class that you need, and we'll figure out a way to get that math credit to you.
And it's successful.
So that kind of goes, just how do we look at it from different?
Again, you look at it, it's kind of funny, we're talking about, it's like geometry, okay? You got somebody that wants to be a construction person going forward. Why do they have to learn geometry that way? Why can't you put them and say, okay, well, figure out the angle of that roof?
It's exactly.
You know? It's like, okay, they're still
With
learning
only time
geometry. I mean, they're only learning geometry, but they're still figuring it out, you know? It's just not in a book.
I think this will be interesting to see how Redwood comes through. They're asking for $23 a month on April 11th. You know, neighboring districts, so I'm curious to see what their new elementary school, $40-some million. Their median house is almost the same as ours, a little higher at 150.
They say anything about their enrollment? What's their enrollment, what's, are they replacing elementary?
In May, I don't recall if it's in, they had a fairly new elementary.
Is there any insight why DLH
Is it
failed?
flat?
They just had a referendum last fall, I believe.
That's my understanding of it.
Right, it was operating, yeah.
I think I've heard from some people over there that until they merge or they don't think they have enough enrollment, that they don't think they can offer enough with the enrollment they have, so until they figure out better plans with neighbors, there are no votes until they get something better figured out. Not just a few people I've talked to in that area. And it kind of comes somewhat to like tech classes and stuff, you know, unfortunately, reality is, when you only have that many kids, how many can you offer? You can't justify 4 kids in a class, so.
Do you know where GFW's at?
That's coming up this spring.
They're going in April.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
They are doing a big project, it's only, I think they have a bunch of existing debt that's dropping off. They, I guess like another 4 or something.
Yeah, and I could
Not
not,
for the new structure.
no, they have to vote, but
But the tax,
But
they're
the
doing.
tax impact is not
It's
that
like-
great, and that's what threw me, but with debt falling off and they have a bigger tax base maybe, I don't know, but
They're able to
For
do
years.
40-some million for like $5 a month,
Oh, really?
because they got debt.
They've had high
Drop
debt.
It's falling off.
yeah.
Probably
I mean, it's not really costing, but that's just what the public.
the increase of what they've been used to paying.
Yes.
Right. So it's just easier, so, right, whereas you're on your graph, your red is so small, everything we do is.
It's
going right on. Okay, thanks, we got direction.
Thank you.
Think we get maybe a couple weeks.
Oh, no, I think it's gonna take a little longer than that.
Let me know and then I'll.
Yeah, we'll get, it's gonna take longer than that. The main thing is, we gotta, it's gonna take as long as it takes to get this infrastructure figured out, so.
And just so to help me out, when I send out a Google invite, a calendar invite, if you click yes on there, it lets me know that you can or can't make it to that meeting. Sorry. No, it's all right. I wasn't pointing to it. And also I've done a doodle poll, which it's strange to be an adult and say doodle poll. But that's a great way of finding out what times we all have available. I've tried it before. Again, I get maybe half of you respond to it. And some of you, I understand you can be available all the time, and some of you are hardly available at all. But that's another nice way for us to plan a meeting. So if you see that come through, please respond to it.
I'm anticipating probably towards the end of April.
Okay.
And
What will the task force
see
do?
Tracy back there looking at you, where are we at with the city of Olivia on this? I mean, I'm a guy, I just want it in, whatever the deal is, I'm not concerned with what the deal is, just that the deal is done, so we know what we have to deal with. I mean, in the past, it's been 50-50, right?
It's
It,
50-50.
it's back to 50-50.
Okay,
for a short time, the city picked up all of it while you guys were doing, some financial concerns and this, or the school district was. And then we phased it back into 25%. And as of July 1st, we're back to 50%. And that deal was only meant to be short term, just to get the school district over the hump.
And way back originally, it was 50-50, wasn't it? The
It's
original
been
assignment?
50-50 probably for 70 odd years.
So I mean, there was like
Even more
30 or
than the
40
pool.
years.
The pool is
City
50
never did
years
anything.
this year. The pool was built in 70, you have 72, I have 73.
Yeah. same.
So, maybe it opened in 73.
Yeah, right.
The blueprints are drawn up.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
Maybe
So-
we could have like a party, like a fundraising party for the birthday party for the pool.
Sure, we'll leave the water out and we'll hire
Yeah.
Denny the DJ and we'll have, lights and
Fill the pool.
And we'll dance, right?
Yeah.
You do have, we ran that analysis, kind of what the total pool
I
costs
was just
were.
gonna say, is that
I believe
still a
so,
number?
but that's past.
Because
I-
Did you see that?
I think I asked for it, but I don't know if I got it.
Let's
Could
get
you
that to-
resend that,
Yep.
just
I-
because Jim and I can.
I had asked for it at the Bird Island meeting, like in November, but I don't know. I should say, I don't remember
We'll
getting
resend
it.
everybody.
Yeah, then we can go sit down with the city knowing now what we do.
So the city was really just waiting for some numbers.
Yeah.
As well as now my numbers have slightly changed due to the fire. But, my CIP list has evolved and changed just a
So
little,
we should
but
look
not
at just make
dramatic.
sure it's done.
Does that apply
It
to
just says
operational?
somewhat.
Is there any capital
Some
side
side
that can
was
help
in
with?
operation.
So,
So
the city administrator who was there when we first started talking about all the issues at the pool is no longer there. And they have a new finance person, and they have a new board member, or council member, excuse me. So I think if we have numbers, that's a conversation we just need to have. They are on a budget just like everybody else, and so, it's what do you have to do? What do you want to do? How can you phase in some of it, or should you do it all at once?
I mean, the wall's gotta get fixed, and we gotta do a treat that incoming air so it doesn't rot it out again.
Yep.
Those two things have to happen.
Tracy, should there, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, if you did the air piece for the school, does that automatically feed into the pool or is
No.
that separate?
Pool is separate, you don't wanna mix up thorns.
Well, no, I just didn't know like if you were.
Yeah.
Like, could you tie that back, but, okay, so it's all.
Currently, a lot of this stuff, because it was an addition at a slightly different time than the previous editions, everything is separate. It's not an ideal setup, because I was told that they had brought it to the people at least once, if not twice, maybe even 3 times before it was passed. And every time they brought it back, they cheapened it up, which is why my heating system is under the stage and my pool heaters are with the boilers in the boiling room, and
Should there be a little joint committee? I mean, a couple people from this board and the Olivia board just to do it properly, so,
I do sit on the pool board.
well, you do, so there is.
Yeah.
so the
pool board
JPA,
is 2 of us and 2 of the city council.
Oh, 2 of the regular board members?
yep,
Yeah,
so the JPA is the JPA is what I call or refer to as my pool board, and it's equally 2 people from each organization plus the administrators, and then myself as an admin type person as well.
Perfect, great.
Maybe they have some grant opportunities in the direction.
There is actually.
All right, just one last thing, I'll just update you all, we had a kind of a nasty failure of the pipes in the bathroom by the cafeteria. It was pretty gross. The pipes had rotted out from the bottom, and instead of the stuff that the urinals were collecting going into the pipes, they were going into the ground, and we're fixing that now. We thought we fixed it a few years ago. We removed one of the 4 urinals, but just then the others were close, and so it's they're digging a big hole in there. They're waist deep in all of that. But we were able to use ESSER funds to cover that, so that's not gonna be a huge impact on us, which is nice, but, anyway, that's our latest project.
And Jim's been taking pictures of some of these things
I did,
to help, so when we start to communicate with the public, there's nothing better than a real life picture, right? Like, this is what's happening. So I asked them, like, keep saying that, so when we start to communicate with the public, at least we don't. It'd be easier to communicate to say, like, this is what our pipes look like. And some of the, I mean, granted, you need to be truthful about where they're located, but, or here's a leak that we have, or something like that. Or the smell, you could do the smell in the picture.
but the smell is
And
nice.
costs associated with those as well.
Yeah, and so, and to add on that, so they're replacing all the urinal piping, but then we're also, right parallel to that is the girls' bathroom side, so they're gonna replace the plumbing on both of those sides.
drains on both sides.
The drains.
The drains.
As long as we're down in there, I
Yeah.
just.
Oh, for sure.
God bless you.
Get her done, Danny.
All right, we'll end this week. Thank you, everybody.
All right.